Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. I'm Callie and today I am doing my February wrap up. I know it's a little late, but I'm moving, so I've kind of been all over the place. And actually, February I considered a slow month for me. I read a total of 15 books. 2 of those were rereads, and those 2 were also the only audiobooks that I listened to. So I will be going over those as well. But yeah, so I'm just gonna get through all the books I read. So I started February off with the November Owl Crate book, which was Among the Beasts and Briars by Ashley Poston. I gave this 3.5 stars. It was really cute, whimsical. We follow this girl who, on the day of her best friend's coronation, these thorns attack and turn all of her loved ones into these monsters from the wood. And then her and her like pet fox, it's not really a pet fox, he's a wild fox that she's been getting to know over the past couple years, run into the enchanted woods and try and figure out how to lift this curse on her friends and family. This felt very like a Fae children's story. It didn't feel like I was following the characters. I felt like I was 8 years old listening to this fairy tale, and I loved that the author was able to do that because I at least think that that was the goal. My only kind of gripe with this is it was extremely predictable. With it being that type of fairy tale and as kind of thing, I could guess what was gonna happen, and the ending was exactly what I thought it was gonna be. But it also happened really, really quickly and didn't quite explain how everything was fixed. It just happened like really fast and then we jumped. So that was a little confusing at the end, but the characters, especially the fox, I loved him. He embodied everything that a fox is, the cunning and the mischievous and all of those things that you associate with that animal, and it was so well done when he was personified. And it was very cute, and if you're looking for a very whimsical fae type of story, definitely pick this one up. The next book that I ended up picking up is Undercover Bromance by Lyssa K. Adams. I read the first book and I liked the first book. There wasn't a ton of smut in it for me for a romance book. But Brittany said that this one was really good and that it got better with the smut. I'll agree the smut got better. However, I gave this book 1 star. I hated it so much, just so much hatred. We follow Olivia, who is the sister of the main girl from book 1, who I hated in book 1 to begin with. We follow her as she's trying to help these women who are being sexually harassed. Now, as great and grandeur as that plot is, the amount of victim blaming that happens within this book is horrific. And not only from the fact that the victim blaming came from men, it came from our main female character, and I hated that. To me, it was never really addressed. It was addressed in 1 sentence saying, "You did this," and she was like, "Oh yeah, I super did that," and then we just glossed over it for the rest of the book. And to me, the character didn't grow or change. She was still a bitch by the end of this book, and I just felt that this did not handle how sexual harassment claims going to the police and going through that entire process should be handled even a little. This was horrific, and I will not be reading the rest of this series because it just left that bad of a taste in my mouth. The next book that I ended up picking up is Thorn by Intisar Khanani. This is a retelling of The Goose Girl, and these kind of retellings have been popping up all the time. So this girl, Thorn, is basically sold to another kingdom because her family hates her. On the road to the other kingdom, she is attacked, and her handmaiden, who hates her guts, makes a deal with a witch to switch faces, basically. And she now has to live as a maid, being abused by the person who literally needs her to live. But whatever. I gave this book 4 stars. This was a really well done Goose Girl retelling, if not the fact that the just sheer amount of family hatred was a lot. But I've noticed that with the Goose Girl retellings, there's just hatred for no good reason, and I think that it's getting annoying. What I really, really enjoyed about this story was our main character. Her growth arc throughout this story was so well done and very well executed. So, and I think that that's an attribute to, I really enjoyed the writing style and the storytelling that the author was able to do within this book. What I also really enjoyed was how the author was able to take real life ethical questions of what defines justice and hypocrisy and all of these almost modern, not modern day, but things that are still being discussed today in this fantasy world with magic and witches and warlocks and all of that. I think that was really well done. And I am intrigued to see where the second book goes, which I do believe drops next month. But I'm just intrigued because it did feel like it wrapped up a bit, which I'm noticing about Ghost Girl retellings because Bloodleaf did that too. Ended really nicely. There's 2 more books. I don't know how that's happening. But I will definitely be interested in reading more of this author just for the sheer brilliance in her storytelling. So the next book that I read was my first reread, this should come to no surprise. I'm rereading Throne of Glass, or listening to it on audiobook. I'm a part of a couple different book clubs online through Book Talk and Discord. And we're doing I'm part of one that's doing a reread of the entire Throne of Glass series and doing just a deep dive into the foreshadowing, the red herrings, and the history and all of the world of Throne of Glass. And it's really fun to go back, especially with books 1 and 2, just going through and seeing things. This is, I think, my 3rd time rereading the series. And even then, I'm still shocked to find different foreshadowing elements that I didn't catch my first 2 reads. And it's also really intriguing because I'm actually listening to it for the first time and listening to words that I've been mispronouncing the entire time. That's a fun time, but it is what it is. It's gonna stay in my head the way it is. Like, kale, it will always be kale. I can't do kale. No, it's kale. Like the leaf. It's kale. So, but it's really interesting and I'm very much enjoying my reread of it. The next book on this list is Deathcaster by Cinda Williams-Chima. This is the epic conclusion to the Shattered Realms Quartet. Now, I give this 3 stars and it was okay. This should not have been 600 and some pages. It was so drawn out with no real good, I don't want to say good endings. It did end very well and I liked the ending, but there was no satisfying resolution. I guess is the best way I can describe it. Everything was so drawn out and our resolution happened like that. There was no big epic thing with our resolution. It just almost happened by accident and I felt a little cheated out of that. So I do still really enjoy these characters and I do feel like they all got their cute little ending and all of that and it was very nice. The first 2 books were so good. The second 2 were just not up to the same caliber that I was expecting from this high epic fantasy. I just feel like there were no real stakes. And I think that just diminished my enjoyment of this series, unfortunately. The next book that I picked up after Deathcaster was The Beauty of Darkness by Mary E. Pearson. This is the finale to the Remnant Chronicles. This ending, however, complete 180 from what I got from Deathcaster. Yes, this is a chonker. However, it is action-packed. Nothing is drawn out. Yes, there's planning and scheming and all of that and plotting. However, it all comes full circle. Whereas I feel like all of our planning and plotting in Deathcaster never came full circle for me. If anything, I think this book was not long enough. I wanted more from our 3 characters. I love them so much. And I'm really excited to dive into the companion novels for this series just because I just want more of these characters. The plot and character development in this book is so well done and a sheer 180 for all of our characters, not just our main Leah character. All of them have a complete 180 and you see that growth. It's not a flip of a switch. It's just so beautifully executed and I loved the writing. I just devoured this book and sobbed uncontrollably from this book. So I just Ugh, I love this series so much. Definitely high up on some of my favorite trilogies now. Wanting to go a little bit different from reading a few high fantasy series in a row, especially a bunch of finales in a row, I picked up I think it's technically a paranormal romance. I picked up A Touch of Darkness by Scarlett St. Clair. This is a modern day Hades and Persephone romance book. And I emphasize romance. This is 100% romance and adult book. Basically, we follow Persephone, who is going to college in the modern world in New Athens, and she's studying to be a journalist. Accidentally goes to a club, as college students do, and meets Hades and makes a deal with him. And now she's trying to use her journalism to try and get closer to Hades to unravel all of his secrets, while also finally realizing that the relationship her and her mother have is extremely toxic. And then she falls for Hades because, of course, it's Persephone and Hades. This felt like an adult book version of the webtoons Lore Olympus. If you like Lore Olympus and you want it to be a bit more adult, this one. Highly recommend. I gave this 4 stars. Was it predictable? Absolutely. Was it a hell of a lot of fun to read? Absolutely it was. This was just sheer fun. You can't go into this expecting amazing plot twists and all of that. It's a modern day Hades and Persephone. You should know that story. I assume you know that story if you're reading this. Don't go into it expecting a big piece of literature. It's romance, and it's great, and it's fantastic. So, highly recommend. After that, I picked up These Violent Delights by Chloe Gong. This is a fantasy-ish, I'm gonna say ish loosely, retelling of Romeo and Juliet set in 1920s Shanghai, China. That's the plot, and it's fantastic. This is probably one of the best enemies to lovers romance I have ever read. Roma and Juliet, the amount of tension in every single one of their scenes is so palpable and fantastically written. I devoured this. Also, it is so fast-paced. Yes, it is loosely based off of Romeo and Juliet. I mean, our main characters are Roma and Juliet. However, that's it. That's like the basics. This is, I think they're in their 20s. This is if Romeo and Juliet, instead of dying at the end of their story, got caught and then were separated for like 5 or 6 years, and then had to come back together to work together to solve a murder mystery kind of thing. Monster murder mystery. That's what this is, and it's wonderful and fantastic, and I gave this 4.5 stars because I loved it that much, and it was great. Also, full of twists and turns, and I need the sequel now because that ending hurt me. I wasn't ready for it. I was not ready for the plot twist, but it was there, and it's a good plot twist. Didn't see it coming. Usually I can see plot twists coming. The next book that I picked up is As the Shadow Rises by Katy Rose Poole. This is the sequel to There Will Come a Darkness. I gave this book 4 stars. I love this series. I've never been a huge fan of Six of Crows. Yes, it's fine. It's a good duology. It's fun. I like this better. There's morally gray characters. The plot is so intense and intriguing and unique. And I love that. Plus, there's like gods personified roaming throughout the entire world, which is so much fun. This almost feels like if Six of Crows were to meet the Fallen Kingdom series. That's how I feel, and I love it. The first book is a little hard to get through because there's so much world building. This book flew by. I read it in a day because I needed more answers, and I need the finale. And it's not coming out until I think later this fall, I'm hoping. The cover and title just dropped. So I think it's this fall. It's August or September. And I need it now because I love these characters and they all better be okay. But I know they're not all gonna be okay. Bad things are happening and I don't know how to deal with it. Next was my second audiobook and my second reread. I read Crown of Midnight. I only have my mini version to hold up because Sarah has my larger version. Like I said, I'm doing this for a reread with a book group on Discord, and it's just really fun. I still think Crown of Midnight is probably my least favorite out of the entire series. Not because it's boring or anything like that, it's just there's reasons I don't like it. Mainly because at least with the rereads, when I get to Crown of Midnight, all I want to do is get to Airfire. And that's all I want. I just need Airfire, which I'm currently in the middle of right now. But yeah, Crown of Midnight's fine. It provides a lot of context that we need for Airfire and Queen of Shadows later on. But yeah, there's reasons I don't like this book. It's not that I don't like this book, it's my least favorite out of my favorite series, if that makes any sort of sense. So the next book that I ended up picking up, I drove in a snowstorm to Barnes & Noble to pick up my copy, which actually isn't the copy I'm going to hold up because that copy is full of tabs. I picked up A Court of Silver Flames. I got the tour edition. I'm really proud of that. I read this in 2 days. I gave it 5 stars. This is book 4, technically. 4, 5. It's a 5th book, 4th real book, if you exclude the novella, of the ACOTAR series by Sarah J. Maas. And here we're following Nesta and her journey through mental health and dealing with her trauma. And it is so beautiful. I'm actually going to do a full spoiler review of this monster because I have so many thoughts and so many feelings about this book. I loved this book. I will say I am torn on having this be my favorite opposed to Mist and Fury, but it's so good, and it was well worth the wait that we had for this book, and I have so many thoughts and feelings. Like I said, I will do a full review of this book with spoilers later on this month. So if you're interested in that, that's coming very soon. I still have to film it. I still have to get all of my thoughts down because I just have so many thoughts and theories about what's happening in this universe. So after A Court of Silver Flames, I picked up Wildcard by Marie Lu, which is the second and last book in the Warcross duology, where we follow Amika, who has hacked her way into the biggest game in the entire world, Warcross, and its owner decides to recruit her to figure out who else is hacking him. It's hard to talk about this book because there is a huge plot twist at the end of Warcross, and this picks up immediately after. I gave this 4.5 stars. I loved this book. As much as I know that the twist was rough and hard to get through, this handled that so well, in my opinion. Amika's feelings and actions felt very realistic as to how someone would react to this. The world felt very tangible and realistic, and I think that it was just so well done, and I loved how it ended. I think it was a perfectly executed ending. And not gonna lie, I want more out of this world. Like, a lot of it. Just the ethical questions that came into play, the morally gray characters trying to distinguish what is right and wrong in a very tough to read situation. And the actual consequences of their actions was presented. You don't see that a ton with the morally gray characters, where you see them receive consequences for their actions. This actually addressed that, and I think that that was really cool and very well done, and I enjoyed every second of this book. So the next book that I have is The Wish Granter by R.J. Redwine. I actually DNF'd this book. I just didn't care. I wish I had a better reason that I DNF'd it, but I don't. I decided to give up entirely on this series just because the first book was okay. I read, I think, about 50 pages of this. I read about, I think, 50 pages of this book, and I just did not care, even a little. I've never been a big Rumpelstiltskin story fan to begin with, and that's what this was. It was a Rumpelstiltskin retelling in the same world as the Shadow Queen, and I didn't care. I wanted to care, but I couldn't do it. So I ended up DNFing this and the series overall. The next book that I ended up picking up is The Gilded Wolves by Roshani. Now this, I gave 4.5 stars. This was fantastic. I enjoyed every second of this. This felt like a steampunk Victorian Indiana Jones with magic. That's what this was. Not Indiana Jones, I'm sorry, National Treasure. More National Treasure, because they follow clues in clue after clue after clue, and it was great, and I loved it. Even, no, I stick by the Indiana Jones. There was definitely Indiana Jones vibes in this. I loved that atmosphere. It was so much fun, and you actually get to see the puzzles that the crew is trying to figure out, and you yourself can try and attempt to figure it out. I was useless. I had no idea, so I was just along for the ride. But it was so much fun. Plus it was set in Paris in the 1800s. The magic system, the way that the societal system worked was so cool and so unique, and I loved it. I just want to follow these characters forever because they're so interesting and intriguing, and they each have their own little thing, and I loved it. So definitely continuing on with this series just because it was just so much fun. So much fun. The last book that I ended up picking up in February was a doozy, and that was The Invisible Life of Addie LaRue by V.E. Schwab. I gave this 5 stars because of course I did. This book was so good. Just so good. We follow Addie, who is running away from an arranged marriage in the 1700s and contacts a devil and makes a deal with him to get out of said marriage. And she basically ends up accidentally gaining immortality, but the cost of that immortality is she is constantly, the second people turn away from her, they forget her. And we follow Addie through her 3 centuries of life until one day in 2014, a boy remembers her. And then we follow our story through there, and it is so poignant and poetic. And this is just a love letter to book lovers, to people, to artists, and I just loved following Addie trying her best to make any kind of impression on the world and trying to basically go around this demon and his rules just for the sheer thought of pettiness. And she's like, Addie's attitude is something I aspire to. It is, I'm gonna live forever, so I'm gonna irritate the shit out of you because you can also live forever and you remember me. So that's a whole thing. And I loved the writing, the prose, the story itself was so beautiful. The ending, it got me. I cried like a lot. It was a good time. I cried at like 3 in the morning while trying to finish this book because I needed to finish it. And it was just so good. It was beautiful. And if you are a lover of any type of art, whether it be books, paintings, any type, history, please read this. It is so good, and I still think about some of the quotes in here every day because it's stuck with me in a way a lot of books. It's been a while since a book has stuck with me like this one has. So those are all of the books that I managed to read in the month of February. Like I said, for me, it was a little bit of a slower month. Usually I can read about 20 books, but February was a shorter month, and I actually went to a out-of-town wedding for a while. Really, I'm pretty proud of what I was able to accomplish this month. Or last month. I know this is really late because I'm trash at planning things. But yeah, so that's gonna be it for today's video. Feel free to like, comment, and subscribe to our channel. We post videos every Tuesday, Thursday, and Sunday. And I will see you guys in our next video. Bye!